Welcome to the MacArthur Memorial Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Williams. Join me as we explore the life and legacy of General of the Army Douglas MacArthur and discuss a wide range of military history topics, from the American Civil War to the Korean War. On May 8, 2025, the MacArthur Memorial, in partnership with the Holocaust Commission of the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater and the Virginia Holocaust Museum, hosted Dr. Roger Loria, a Holocaust survivor. The event was held on the 80th anniversary of VE Day, of Victory in Europe, the day the Allies defeated Nazi Germany. A video of the presentation is also available via YouTube. A link is available in the description of this episode.
Hello, good evening. My thanks for your willingness to listen to me and hear a story. I hope that the message is clear, and I'd like to make sure that the point of this talk is to deal with the hatreds that we see today. We try to do this. People are not born hating, they are learned to hate. And this presentation hopefully will show you that this is indeed the case. So let me start with this. The first, you see the map of the US, where you see the A of America is Norfolk. And that's the distance from here to Europe is about 3,500 miles. So clearly the large distance, but rather, as you will see, very important. This is the map of Europe before World War II. You see the enormous size of Russia, and Poland is in green, Germany purple. I was born in Belgium, where you can see the 1, 2, and 3, the small countries. These are the flatlands. The flatlands, every war, the armies go to the flatlands. You cannot escape a war if you live in these countries, because that's the easy way to go through in Europe. So clearly, living in Belgium, I was the recipient of this war. In 1933, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. It is extremely relevant that he was elected in normal election. But a month later, he became a dictator. So clearly, you see the pathway here. In his speeches and writing, Hitler spread the belief of racial purity and the superiority of the Germanic race. He used the Aryan as a master race, and the Waffen-SS was the tool that he used to control the public. Now, he declared that the German race must remain pure so that one day this race will rule over the world. The ideal Aryan was blonde, blue eyes, tall, and I failed all three. When Hitler and the Nazis came to power, these beliefs became the government ideology and policy. Remember, no television, barely telephones. If you needed news, you had to go to a movie house to see a newsreel. So clearly, they could control all the knowledge and information that the public has. And you see today some attempts to do the same. In the poster and radio, the classroom and newspaper that they control. They also did this about degenerate art. Some of Chagall and other artists they declared as degenerate. Clearly, some of that art they burned, some they took for their own use. And we have a collection at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, which my wife has shown to people when they come for a visit. Look at the black man with the Star of David. I don't have to say more. And many books, including Einstein, Jacques, and so on, all were considered degenerate books. Now, in 1938, March 38, they declared the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria. And since Austria was a German-speaking, they had an easy way to control Austria. However, there was an area in Czechoslovakia, was called the Sudetenland. And the Sudetenland had a large population of German-speaking people. So Hitler used that excuse to invade that area. We see similar attempts today of Putin using the excuse that there are Russian-speaking people in certain area to control them. So in 1938, Germany invaded Poland, but France and Britain had a treaty with Poland which required them to defend it, and that resulted in the initiation of World War II. Hitler wanted to ensure the delivery of Swedish ore and to Germany for making weapons. So he invaded Sweden and then Denmark and Norway to control those assets. In May 10, 1940, Germany made the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war against Belgium, Holland, and Luxembourg and France. And in 2 days, they were in those countries controlling them. Now, before I go further, this is important to notice. This is the cemeteries of the handicapped people at Habdamar. The Germans used the handicapped people before the war to test their methods of killing by poisoning, by burning, by starvation. And this is the cemeteries of the handicapped people at Hadamar. Hundreds and thousands of people were treated that way. This is essentially what happened in those days. I use this to show you the Maginot Line. The Maginot Line was an enormous fortress that the French built after World War I. Miles and miles of fortress with the idea by the generals who cannot think out of the box that this would prevent Germany from invading France. It just went around it. They never touched the Maginot Line. So it shows you that you have to be able to think out of the box. Okay, this is some of the numbers that are known. About 6 million Jews, about 3 million Polish, Gentile, Roma, about 500,000, gay people, about 500,000. This is what is known. Before I continue, you need to know that during World War II, the total between civilian and military, more than 75 million perished. 75 million in total. So clearly, these are enormous number, and the effect are enormous on society. Okay, excuse me. This is from my young age. I'm born in Antwerp, Belgium. Antwerp is a port city and has the advantage that the canals allow you to go 200 miles into the heart of Europe. So this is very important for supplies, a strategic situation. This is the cathedral in Antwerp, still existing, and at the bottom of the cathedral there is a monument of the workers, one of the few places where you see giving honor and credit to the workers who built the cathedral. We were there at one time and there was a fence, so I climbed over the fence to take the pictures. And when I came out, this man shook my hand. And when I turned his hand, he was a Mason. So it shows you that this was relevant. This is City Hall in Belgium, in Antwerp. This is not a carpet. These are flowers. And once a year they do this in Antwerp. Now, this is Julienne Desjardins and her husband in the other picture when they're there dressed for Halloween. I owe this woman a debt which can never be repaid. She was a friend of the family, and she went into the apartment when we had to leave and took pictures. I am one of the few Holocaust survivors who has pictures. I know how my father looked, how my grandfather looked. Most people don't know that. Because of this woman, I have this advantage. And I knew her after the war. She was a great person, and I owe her. I never can repay that. This is my father and mother before the war. I like to say it's a nice couple, but I'm biased. This is Antwerp under the V-1 rockets. The Germans used ballistic rockets, and they could take out an entire block. So clearly the damage was enormous, and you can see the effect there. Now, when the Germans invaded Antwerp, Belgium, and Antwerp, the family decided they could try to walk to Dunkirk, where the British forces were. Now remember, in those days, there were no McDonald's, there were no tents. You were on the road, essentially walking. Rain, cold, no food, you had to do it that way. And the family, and I was a baby then, and they carried me. And at one time, my mother tried to get some milk from a farmer, which they refused initially. And by the time she found some and came back running, that milk had turned into butter. So we had no choice. The Germans formed a pocket and stopped us because the Germans were firing on one side, the French and British firing on both, and we were in the middle. So essentially, we had no choice. And they said, go back to your home, we will not hurt you. And essentially, we had no choice. We had to go back. You couldn't stay on the road in those conditions in those days. So once we got back, they used the time to develop laws. Sounds familiar. And some laws to transform Jews into social pariahs, outcasts. And you had to register, you had an identification card, which stamped Juif in French, Jood in Flemish, or Jew in English. And it made them, prevent them from attending most public places. Your business were confiscated, and you were put in places specific only for Jews, which made it very difficult. This is my father and me. I am here 1 year of age. I may not believe it's me, but it is. And this is my mother. And as you will hear, my mother deserves all the credit possible that can be bestowed on a person. She said she brought me into this world and over saved me. And I owe her. She passed some years ago. Now, in April 41, the Anti-Jewish League burned some of the synagogues and broke 200 windows of Jewish-owned shops and some synagogues too. You heard about Kristallnacht in many countries. Every place Germany had control, there was another Kristallnacht, like here in Antwerp. So this was not unique there. By that time, you had to wear the yellow star. The yellow star says, he who wears this symbol is an enemy of our people. I can guarantee to you that those two little girls are not enemy of any people, and the same thing with the little boy. So clearly, it's absolute nonsense. And this is from the Holocaust Museum. These two boys who wear a yellow star, they don't know they're Jewish. You need a blanket and a bottle. That's all. And as you can see, this is what it's done. Now, a year later, on the 15th of August 42, the city police of Antwerp, the Antwerp police, helped to arrest 1,000 Jews. 280 of them were children, and they were all deported later on. 61.8% of Jews living in Belgium would be murdered upon arrival at the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Birkenau. That is when Julien came to warn us that we had to leave, and that of some of the family, my uncle, my aunt, and my uncle, and that was my mother's sister, Anne, and her husband, Paul Gottlieb, were already taken by the Gestapo and put into the camp. This is my mother's sister. I had never seen that pictures of her till about a couple of years ago, and this was the first time I saw her picture. When she was in the line in Auschwitz, she knew that she wouldn't make it. So she had a ring that her husband had made for her. So she took the ring off, went to a man in the line from Antwerp that she knew, and told him, if you survive, bring that ring back to my sister in Antwerp. That man did survive, walked back, and brought the ring to my mother. My mother gave the ring to my wife when we got engaged. So clearly, these people had integrity. This is her husband, Paul. It's important to know that there were close to 74,000 Jewish slaves working in the mines in Germany at the time. He never survived as much. So clearly, this is him. This is my niece, my only niece. That's the only person of my generation. She was 4 years old when she's taken to Auschwitz. Any child below 9 years old was immediately killed because they couldn't work. If you could work, they would keep you for some time. But she was 4 years old at the time, and the beautiful Virginia was immediately killed. This is my mother's grandfather, my grandfather. This is a picture of him of the 1900. He was in this close to 70, and he was taken and killed also immediately. This is the Caserne d'Ossin, where all the people we gathered. That's about 10 miles from the main city of Antwerp. This is now a museum for the Holocaust, and I'll show you some matters of that in a minute. This from there, the children and everybody would put in cattle cars. These cattle cars had no benches, just plain floor, no toilet, no nothing. 2 days and 2 nights, they were shipped that way, in the cold and everything. Very harsh. There is one cattle car in front of the Holocaust Museum in Richmond, which people can see. From Belgium, from the Dossin barrack, Caserne, a total of 124 Jews were deported, 5,340 children. 95% or more were murdered upon arriving to Auschwitz. Now, there was a place in France which was called France Libre, which meant Free France. That was a misnomer. It's Vichy control, pro-German control. But people did not know, so they hoped that they could go there and survive. And my father went there hoping that he could escape and survive. We never saw him after that. From the 317 people survived. My mother and I are 2 of the 317. The numbers are staggering. This is from the Holocaust, from the museum at the Caserne d'Ossin. There are 5 floors of these pictures. You can put your finger on any person and get the details, where, what, and everything. This is the first time I saw the signature of my father when I visited there. So clearly, this is an enormous resource for people to find. It takes enormous time. The world doesn't end with the armistice. It took more than 70 years to find people from the family, if there are any survivors. So clearly, this is very, very important. This is my father, who had come to Belgium as a young boy. He was working in the diamond industry, and he was a cleaver and a dealer, diamond dealer. However, he was born in Poland, and Poland was annexed by Germany, so he became stateless. When you're stateless, that means you are nobody. You can't get a bank account, you can't get a visa, you can't get anything. You are nobody. And he was very afraid that the Gestapo would take him. My mother and I were Belgian born, so we had a little bit of, bye. So that's why he decided to go to France Libre with the hope that we would follow him there and find him. It never happened. So this is me at the age of 2, when we decided to walk and find my father, which we never did, success obviously. And we went to France, And once you pass into France, you become a ward, what is called under la Société des Étrangers. You are part of the society for foreigners, and they control your movement. And they shipped us all the way to the Mediterranean area of Perpignan, to a concentration camp called Rivesaltes. This was one of the awful camps by Maréchal Pétain, who was the ruler of France and wanted to be more German than the Germans themselves. That camp had more than 6,475 people from all kinds of, from Spaniards to Franco regime, anything there. The conditions were horrible. And it mean, as I will show you later, starvation, disease, and filthy condition. More than 650 children died from starvation in that camp. They essentially, you need to survive. I'm a professor at the medical school. To survive, you need about 2,400 calories a day, roughly, to survive. They were giving us 800. That's a form of starvation torture, and that's how we had to make it out. Now, we were lucky. There was a woman called Marie Elms, and she was a Quaker who had taken children from Spain to France, and she harbored us for 2 weeks, my mother and I, in a place called Vernay-les-Bains, where she had a colony. Those 2 weeks of food saved my life. Without that, I would have been dead. And she did that, and for 2 weeks we were there. And then the French moved us from there to a place in Montpellier in the north of France. So clearly, it shows you how sometimes fortune happens. Now, in Montpellier, we were there for some time in a cloister, and then from there, they were shipped, 5 women and 20 children were shipped to Annecy, to this place was called, to this hotel, and was controlled, and we were put in there. And that was under Vichy control too, and was essentially, so 20 Jewish women and 5 children were sent, sorry for my thing. And then on November that year, the Gestapo raided the place to deport everybody. And this was done at the same time with picking up all the children from Annecy which were in school and taking them to, which we did not know at the time. So we found that much later. And these were all murdered there. They deported the children too, but we did not know that. When the Gestapo came to that hotel where we were, I was playing in the yard. Can you hear me in the back? No? Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I'm used to medical students. So I was playing in the yard with some stones, and I was 3 years old by that time, and I saw this car coming up to the circuited road, and for some reason, that car made me look at it for a long time, for a 3-year-old in concentration. After 10 minutes or so, I lost, and I went back to the rocks. Then the car pulled into the yard, and 2 German soldiers came out with the long coats and button, which I can still see, and an officer. And then they walked up the stairs where the women were in the kitchen. And I stood there watching them walking and didn't follow them. When they came up, they start cursing the women, which is their method. And my mother, who was on the first table, saw that and jumped to the second table in the back. And when the 2 soldiers closed the front doors, she jumped to the back door, ran around the building, saw me standing there, grabbed me, and into the woods we went. For my knowledge, I am the only one who managed to escape the Gestapo raid from that place. We were in the woods for some time, and then once we came out of the woods, there was a long road which I could see. My mother had lost her glasses, and she used to ask me, Roger, are these Germans there? There was a man with a bicycle. And I was 3 years old. I wasn't sure, but I said what I could. It turns out not to be a German, and he gave us direction how to get to the main city of Annecy. My mother was adamant to get to the city to warn 21 women who had received permission to work in the city, not to come back to the hotel and be deported. And we did. We made it to the city, and she warned everybody, and these 21 women were saved because of her. They put us in an attic in one of the houses, and in that attic there was one woman, which I still recall, and we had to make sure she didn't scream, because her child was one in the trucks that were going toward Auschwitz. And I could see the trucks going by from a little window in the attic. We were very lucky, but the resistance came later to support us and feed us and hide us till later we can escape. We have gone back to the road this is the road that my mother had walked through toward the city. And we walked through that, and believe me, in November we don't close by foot. She did a phenomenal job. Just for the record, because we escaped, the Gestapo listed us as deserters. I am the first 3-year-old deserter, I think, in the world. So it just shows you the absurdity of this, what it is. Now, this is a monument from Czechoslovakia, from a woman, Kilova, I cannot pronounce her name, 42 girls, and 4 boys were marched for 2 days to the gas chamber. If you want a definition of genocide, you have it in front of you. 2 girls and 40 boys. Look at the age of these children. Clearly, you cannot be more specific. Now, we were lucky enough to find a smuggler, was a woman from Belgium, turns out to be. My mother had some diamonds in a toothbrush for my father in the handle, and she paid that smuggler to walk us to the Swiss border. We walked by night. You had to crawl on your belly to get to the barbed wire because the Germans had made trenches so that you would break your neck. I can still remember the Swiss guard lifting the wire and letting us in, the barbed wire. And then they took us to the station, which still exists. It's not a station anymore. It's a private home now. But this was the first time when I had tea in that place. I was 3.5 years old. Now, then we became refugees in Switzerland. When you're a refugee in a country, you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to live where you want. You are assigned place. It's like house arrest, and you have to abide by the condition. I got very sick after that. All the children diseases, one after another, I got. And it's not surprising because the first time I got in contact. And then I was put into contact with some relatives, some cousins of ours in Geneva. And then later my mother and I stayed together till the end of the war. Okay, this is me at the age of 4 in Switzerland. Now, the reason there is an American flag is not by chance. We knew that the only way the war would end if the American forces would come and win the war. And that's why I have an American flag in my hand. That was a hope, okay? Not maybe. And I don't have to say there's no reason to discriminate for any reason there as listed. I think now you're coming on.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife will take a little bit.
You're going to do this.
Yeah, okay.
I'm better standing. Can you hear me? I'm a classroom teacher, so I'm used to yelling. I'm not used to microphones. I wanted to bring this story home to you. That's my father. He was from Lawrenceville, Virginia, and he never thought he'd see Europe. His father was a station master in Lawrenceville, and he started driving a truck when he was 13. When Pearl Harbor was hit, he enlisted. There was about 6 months between his enlistment and being called up, and he came to Norfolk and worked at the shipyards during that time. After the war, in 1947, my parents were married here. My mother was from Franklin, Virginia, in Southampton County. My grandfather had the Tidewater News, newspaper that he ran until the 70s when he retired. So we go back a long way in Virginia. My family came here in 1611 to Jamestown. So the point is, when there's chaos and violence, inevitably, it doesn't stay contained. It comes to you and knocks on your door. And that's what happened to my dad. You see the red up there? That's my father. This is the ship that brought him across from Southampton. He and his crew, his tank was in the bottom of the ship, and he was supposed to roll onto the shores of D-Day a little bit before the 4th hour. However, this ship was hit. 220 men of his group were on that boat. 10 made the shore, 2 made the day, 2 finished the war. My dad was one of the 2. In case you're wondering, I wasn't born until 1949. So this is just a little bit of my father's story of his war. This was a card he sent to my mother in December with the beginning of 1945. My father's war took him all the way from D-Day until April the 5th of 1945, when he was in an action that earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. He won every medal all the way up to the Distinguished Service Cross through various things that he did, and every one of them said entered the war from Virginia, entered the service from Virginia. How do we know this? A lot of the people who came back from World War II couldn't talk about anything that had happened. And my father had been through a lot of the worst of us. He was a 20-year-old kid. He went through D-Day, Saint-Lô, the Hurtgen Forest, the Battle of the Bulge. He was 56 days on the front. He said it was so cold that they they'd pour the water in their helmet to shave, and it would freeze before they could put it on their face. He had curly hair, so his beard curled back and infected because of the cold. So he carried those scars with him all of his life, in addition to a lot of other scars. This is April. I was finishing up to tell you that he would talk about the war. He talked about it to us. And he would always say, well, he was in a tank battalion that was a reconnaissance group. So they were the first ones. He said their job was to keep going, to keep rolling until somebody started shooting, and then they would wire back their position. This is April 4th of 1945, and this is the Ohrdruf concentration camp. He and his group found that camp on their way. It was a satellite camp of Buchenwald. They had no idea what they were about to discover. And he said that when they went in and they saw, this is my father, and you can see his, he was in a tank, so his...
Logos.
Yeah.
That's from tank.
Yeah.
Tank.
Anyway, we found this picture some years later. My father never talked to me about the camps. He talked about everything else, but he didn't talk about this. When he met Roger, when we first got together, he told me, and he told Roger that he had seen it and he knew what had happened. After everything he had seen at D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge, when they entered this place, he couldn't speak for 2 days. Now, the next day was April 5th, a day he said he'd always remember because that was his last day of the war. So he married my mother on April 5th because he figured he'd never forget the day. When they went into the camp, he said there were certain rules of combat, but he said they killed all the guards they found because they couldn't believe the inhumanity. That was a gallows where the guards had hung people. And the people were so sick, they tried to feed them their K rations, which were very fatty. And so it made the people sick. Okay, so that's Ordruff. I wanted to tell you before I finish that the next day, he was the lead tank on the Hochster Road in Germany. And the second tank behind him, a kid came out from a farmhouse running and yelling. And so the second tank popped the lid and to see what was wrong with the kid. A kid tossed a grenade into the tank. And of course, it exploded. My father got out of his tank and went into that tank and saved 2 people. And then he organized the rest of them to get that tank off the road because it constituted, it was ripe for ambush. And that's what he won the Distinguished Service Cross for. This is a painting by an embedded journalist during the Civil War. It occurred on the day of the Battle of Manassas, and it's called Run to Freedom. And if you come to see me at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, I'll show it to you.
It's a black man with 2 babies and his wife during the war, running for freedom. We all run for freedom. Doesn't matter who we are. Keep that in mind. Now, this is me. This is my certificate from the United Nations as a political prisoner at the age of 7. I knew fork and knife, politics not much, but the United Nations certified me as a political prisoner. I was 7 years old. Now, from my grandfather's side in Poland, it was a very large family. He had business with a farmer in a small village in Poland, and my Polish is very poor. It was called Japanik or Red Japanik. And they went to that village hoping that nobody would ever find them. The German army walked into that village about a month later and killed everybody, either buried them alive or just fired them out. We know this is the largest grave of a single family in the Second War. We know this from fact because 2 boys, Moshe and Isaac, which I knew later, were playing on the roof. They saw everything. They survived the war. I knew them in Israel, both of them. They saw everything, and clearly we know this for fact. From my father's side, he had a sister, Rachel, with a family. They were all killed. A brother, Yachiel, family gone. Gusti, also, and Ariel, all gone. From my mother's side, you can see not much either survived. This is the 2 sisters from my father, Rachel and Gusti, and the one with the violin is Rachel. This is a picture of Rachel. My daughter, youngest daughter, is named after her, and I think she's a beautiful woman. Now, after we were sent back to Belgium, mandatory, my mother tried to find first money from a bank. Ladies in the room, young ladies. She could not get her money from the bank because in those days, a woman needed a signature of her husband to get her own money. My father was in Auschwitz, not declared dead yet. She could not get her own money. We were literally on the street. When she tried to find work in Belgium in 1945, 1946, they said, Madame, we do not give work to Jews here. It was blatant, outright. So she found a place in the Jewish orphanage. There was a Jewish orphanage in Antwerp with 100 children. My mother is on the far side of the picture there. This is a group of girls that she was supervising. I had to be with the boys for disciplinary reasons. I was not supposed to communicate with my mother, only on the days off once in 2 weeks. I was the lucky guy. I had a mother, so I didn't complain. Clearly, it was important to keep it that way. The entire orphanage was taken to Israel in 1949. Israel made an effort to take all the orphans back to the country. We were the first group of children in the first year of the formation of the State of Israel. We made it in November 49, and we were the first group of children from the orphanage making it there. This is true. We had to wait. We were put in a ship which were renamed Galila. This is the ship. This was converted from the Hudson River to go in the Mediterranean. I don't have to explain that. That's like taking a canoe there. The ship in the Mediterranean, when we were there, was radioed during our travel to go to Tripoli, Libya. Sounds familiar? We had to pick up 600 Jews which were being expelled from Libya. The Arab countries, all of them, expelled their Jewish citizens from their country. 1.2 million Jews were expelled. You don't hear that. We picked up 600 from Libya. These people, we put them in the ship. They had no idea what was sitting there. They put their luggage on the bed and were sleeping on the iron floor. We came to Haifa. Everybody was taken care of. This is Haifa, the port. This is the Baha'i garden. You may not know this, but there is a Baha'i religion in Israel which is not persecuted by the Iranians. There's no Christian, Jews, and Muslim. There is a Baha'i religion, and this is the temple in Haifa. Clearly, rather important to know. So this is me growing up in Israel. And after high school, you drafted automatically to the military. I was in a tank battalion. This is me, 19 years old. I had responsibility administratively for 825 men. I wasn't shaving yet. And these are the American tanks that were taken from World War II. They had a very small gun, which was not effective. So they put a 75 millimeter gun on them. And because it was long and big, they had to put weight. Otherwise, the tank would keel. So they had to put weight in the back. But now the tank was too heavy, so they had to put a new engine in. So that's how we did it. Now, this is important. The trope is that Jews don't fight. And I want to make sure that this is clearly debunked. This is Jews in the different military countries and armies. More than 25,000 Jewish soldiers fell during World War II, and you can see the numbers. There is clearly a trope which says that Jews don't fight. They fight when they have to. Now, please pay attention to this with me. In this country, we pick on minorities. On your top left, Irish, don't come here. Italians were lynched in New Orleans. Spanish, Mexicans, Jews, Muslims, Chinese, and Japanese were enormously discriminated in this country. So clearly, the method is you pick on the minority. And what I don't include here, what I have not included, is the native tribes, which we have essentially caused their Holocaust. Clearly, we need to keep that in mind. Don't let that happen. Don't let people pick on the minorities. She said hate doesn't help, and it never does. And I want you to make sure. Now, you mentioned 80 years. This was 80 years of the Gestapo raid in Annecy, France, where I gave the first time a speech, and with all the French. And this is the name of the children that were deported by the Gestapo in France. And this is the border in France. On one side, the hand is Switzerland. On the other side, where I am, is France. And that shows you what it takes to cross to make a cross. Now, this is a place near the border of a monastery at the time. This is a wall. There's a wall of 10 feet. On that side of the wall is Switzerland. On this side of the wall is France. The gardener who knew the German patrol was going, and he counted the 3 minutes they had time. So he went to the second floor, took his cap off, and the people behind the trees ran with a makeshift ladder, jumped off the wall into Switzerland. 250 people survived. The priest of that place was later shot by the German. I gave a presentation there. Clearly, I want to end with this: kindness and love, and not racism. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Loria. So when we were having dinner a little earlier, he mentioned that he has helped mentor or train 6,000 doctors. One life. If you have a few moments, sir, there are a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
How and when did you start telling your story?
I didn't speak about this for 50 years. As long as my mother was alive, I respected her wishes. She didn't want to talk about it. So after she passed away, and I saw what happening in this country, where they were burning the churches and killing the Vietnamese and gay people, I decided it's for me to speak. I know what it is. And that's when I start speaking.
How and when did you find out about what happened to your father?
Oh, that was much later. It took almost several years to find out. Luckily, with a man who was in the marches and saw him in Birkenau, came back to Antwerp and told us where he died in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And that took years, at least. Yeah, through the starvation marches. We took years, 2-3 years at least, yeah.
And then you had to wait until it was certified.
Yeah, and then you had to wait till it was made official.
How did your family select their path out of neutral Belgium when the Nazis invaded?
I don't follow.
I think, why did they choose to go into France?
Initially, the thought was there was an area in France which was free, France Libre, but it was fake. It was not. And they were hoping to get there first, but it never happened.
Last question. After living in Europe and visiting several of the camps, I find it very hard to believe people are deniers of this atrocity. How do you respond to these people?
That's a very difficult question. But these people are not willing to look at facts. They have made a mind, and that's what they want to say. And we see a lot of that happening today. Clearly, I am the only survivor from a large family. It's a fact. It's not a maybe. So you can deny all what you want, but that's the reality.
Thank you very much, Dr. Loria. That concludes our program for the evening, and we just want to thank you all again for being here with us tonight and bearing witness to Dr. Loria's story. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you have questions, comments, or topic suggestions, the MacArthur Memorial team wants to hear from you. You can reach us at macarthurmemorial@norfolk.gov or find us on X at MacArthur1880 or on Facebook and Instagram as MacArthur Memorial.